NFL trade of the weekend. Deebo Samuel to Washington. Some say no-brainer, big W. I have a panelist here who's not going there yet. We'll go around that horn. Also, NFL Combine hits and misses, and how we were robbed of an all-time dunk in the NBA yesterday, but got an old man dunk in the NBA this weekend. We say goodbye to Steph Curry, the dunker, on Around the Horn. In memoriam.
Where's the Oscar for production for this show?
Deebo Samuel for a fifth-round pick. That's one thing that jumps out at you, that it's Washington on the receiving end after the dream turnaround season and ahead of schedule. Jaden Daniels is another. Is Deebo still Deebo? A question you might be asking yourself. He turned 29 this past January. Around the horn on this trade, Courtney Cronin, first to you. Bigger win for Washington or loss for San Francisco?
Oh, it's a big win for Washington. They only had to give up a fifth-round pick to get somebody who can be an effective playmaker immediately, Tony. Let's not forget how far they went last year with only 1,000-yard receiver in Terry McLaurin. They had the fifth-best scoring offense. Jaden Daniels has the best rookie season ever. Imagine what happens when you add Deebo Samuel into the mix. And it's not just the passing game that gets a boost. It's the running game. It's the gadget plays, all the different ways that you can use someone like Deebo Samuel in this offense. I think it's a great move. And they did it because this is how you have to contend with the best team, not only in your division, but the best team in the NFL right now, which is the Philadelphia.
Right, you're all in on this move.
Offense.
A+ for Washington.
Yep, all in.
I'm hearing from Cronin. Bill Barnwell, now I turn to you. I saw you shaking your head no. Please.
Courtney's very astute, but I have to disagree here. This is a guy in Deebo Samuel who has not had a 900 receiving yard season more than once in his career, and that was 4 years ago. A player who averaged below 4 yards a carry rushing last season. A player who is going to make $17.5 million this year when he's been that guy once as a pro. So far, the Niners getting a fifth-round pick in this trade, I know it doesn't sound like much. I know it doesn't sound like you're adding a big draft pick. We're 2 years removed from the final pick in the fifth round of the draft being Puka Nacua, who is a pretty darn good wide receiver, making a fraction of $17.5 million over these next few years. I understand wanting to add Deebo Samuel, no issue there necessarily, but who was Washington bidding against to give up a fifth-round pick to add a player who has not been that caliber of player consistently and paying $17.5 million
So you would say the fifth-round pick is something. Steep, maybe not steep, but Pablo Torre, around the horn to you.
It feels like the perfect match, though. The reason why this trade went off and both sides are happy is because, of course, the Niners can hear what Bill said and think like the accounting department that they have and say, look at the money we got off the books. This guy requested a trade. He's a depreciating asset. Here we have the perfect suitor in a team that wants to go for it now, that needs another wideout behind Terry McLaurin, as aforementioned, and also wants to make a splash that proves that they're for real in the division going up against the Super Bowl champions. And that is the fantasy of the trade. I happen to have had Deebo Samuel on my fantasy football team for years and years now. I'm just here to warn you that okay, I shouldn't have done that. Probably know better. But the point is, I know what it's like to be seduced by the name and the brand value only to realize this guy is declining.
No, in 2021, it seemed like there was a revolution
good
coming,
headline.
Right? A guy who could do
but
all
now
things
it's
for
like,
you. And we haven't got that guy come back, right?
Yes, fifth round feels right for that specific
Glenn
reason.
Yates, around the horn to you.
Yeah, let's not forget the Commanders traded away Jahan Dotson for a third-round pick last year. So this is, from a math standpoint, obviously good for them. But overall, this is horrible for the Niners. This is the indication that this whole thing, I think, is just kind of crumbling and moving away from what it was because they're going to have to spend all this money on Brock Purdy. You're not telling me that Niners fans are as confident in what this team can be now than they were 2 years ago, because every single thing you seem to recognize a three-level player like him as receiver who Purdy depended on, just gone after he claimed he was 20 pounds overweight, something I can also put on an organization that he plays for as well. Big loss, big game, both sides.
Courtney Cronin back in.
Bill and Pablo are acting like Deebo Samuel is awful. He's averaged like 731 receiving yards and about 130 rushing yards a season over the last 3 seasons. They need that production. Zach Ertz was their next leading receiver. He's 34. He's headed towards free agency. This is a perfect fit for an offense that needs another weapon.
All right, Barnwell, last word.
It's good. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but you're paying $17.5 million for that player in a market where we're going to have a lot of guys hitting free. Is he better than Cooper Kupp? Is he better than the other guys who are going to be hitting the market probably for free because they were going to get cut the same way Deebo Samuel was going to get cut if this trade did not get done?
That'll be the last word on that. We'll move on. Dan Graziano has a report about the New York Giants interested in making a trade as well, and that would be a trade to move up to number 1 to draft a quarterback. That would be moving up 2 spots, but getting their choice at QB, whoever it could be. In this report, by the way, they also said they're considering Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, and Kirk Cousins as veteran options. So they're considering everything. Everything is good, right, Bill? What should they be focused on to fill their QB opening?
They should be focused on figuring out whether they actually like one of these 2 quarterbacks at the top of the draft in Cam Ward or Shooter Sanders, or whether they're just throwing everything at the wall and trying to get their fans to appreciate how much effort they're putting into getting something to stick. They were in for Matthew Stafford. They didn't get Matthew Stafford. He stayed back with the Rams. They're in for every veteran quarterback, every rookie. Okay, that's fine, but pick a path. This time last year, the Broncos came out this week. Sean Payton said, we were not interested in Bo Nix yet, even though he threw poorly at the combine because we were not expecting him to be at that level. Once we evaluated him more in March, we liked him more. We ended up drafting him. Obviously, they're happy with that decision. That process is still going on. The Giants don't have to be leaking this stuff, don't have to be talking about this stuff yet. Just do the work. You don't have to put it in front of everyone like you did last year.
So then I go to New York now, someone else who gives up too much information in his last answer. Pablo Torre, around the horn to you.
I did hear the magic word process there, and I just want to ask the Giants if they have one. Like any plan, any process. Now, look, Tony, remember, Week 17, the Giants are playing the Colts. It's a game they should lose because they want a quarterback in this draft, and they go and they win the game. Okay, so when they're now throwing everything at the wall, when they're turning over the poo-poo platter and saying, look at all the stuff we're trying to eat, the reason they have to do that is because they didn't have a plan. And yes, Bill, this metaphor makes sense, I assure you. Look, Tony, the thing about the Giants is they're desperate to show that they know what they're doing, and at every turn, there's no consistency of logic. And so I guess they're going to go and try and do the thing where they overpay for Sam Darnold when they need to find the Sam Darnold that hasn't yet become last season's Sam Darnold. They're going to go and overpay for the number 1 pick that they could have had potentially by just losing the game. I have no sympathy for any of it. None.
Cece, around the horn to you on the New York Giants.
To use Pablo's word, desperate, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are desperate to keep their jobs. They've got to do something, and there's no can't-miss quarterback prospect that would be ready to go right away and lead a team like the Giants, coming off a 3-win season, into the winning category. The team's too far away, so they have to go after a veteran quarterback option. Sam Darnold makes sense. They were in on him, expressing interest last year before he signed with the Vikings. Kirk Cousins can sign there for a veteran minimum deal once he's released by Atlanta. Even them kicking the tires on Aaron Rodgers makes sense, because if you stay where you're at 3, if you go up to 1 to try to get Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, whatever it is, neither of those guys are going to be ready right now in 2025 to do anything with your team. So having a veteran option, thus the reason they were in on Matthew Stafford, is the only way that this team can get out of the hell that they've been in the last couple of seasons and try to get closer to, 7 wins? Maybe that's a ceiling on this team?
This is such an awful situation for NYG, too, because that declaration of if the coach and the GM don't get it together, you're gone, screws everything up. You're not going to mortgage the future just to get a random guy that's not going to be there with that set of humans, and that roster potentially isn't any good anyway. This was a major miscalculation by the front office of the Giants, and I think you've got to pick a plan that doesn't screw your future more than anything. The problem is that other teams on league, and the Commanders just got better out of nowhere. So now your entire expectation landscape has changed. Make sure you don't mess up your future, no matter who you get.
I
this
hear
year.
what
And
you're
his name
saying.
is
All of
Rodgers.
you.
you got big problems.
Except the representation. They're trying to show people they're working. The problem was the showing last year in the offseason on a telephone with Saquon Barkley. They were showing us how they operate, and I don't think you want to show people that. One more story here. Combine. Courtney, you were there for part of the week. Quarterbacks don't throw unless they really think they can rise. And Jackson Dart did and looked sharp. And Will Howard also threw and did not look sharp. And this made the rounds. What does it mean?
This speaks to why top quarterback prospects like Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, Tony, don't want to throw at the combine. I don't think this is going to hurt Will Howard. His projection right now is as a high-end backup. A 5th to 7th round pick is a grade that I got from one team I spoke with. It's not great. Obviously, you don't want to be airmailing routes on air, but I don't think this is going to kill his draft stock from where it already was with him going into the combine.
Glenn Yates?
Honestly, the whole thing of the combine, and I don't want to knock any particular player or team at all, it all feels very late-stage capitalism, just kind of in general. Like, we really have people just coming up here to kind of throw the ball around and do these things, and we've been watching them, and we've got more footage on anybody than we've ever had in our lives. Things like the social part of it, the idea of athletes getting together, quite frankly, things like what Courtney does to bring women in football together seem like the larger actual net positive of this function.
I hear what you're
football
saying.
Stuff,
I mean, maybe you started very big, but job auditions exist in the world, and view it as a job audition, right?
No, they play football for that. The Underwear Olympics are really just a sideshow.
Oh, all right. Bill Barnwell, can you take anything away from quarterbacks that maybe don't throw their best at the combine?
You can, but it's a selection bias thing. I saw this a few years ago with Teddy Bridgewater, which was at his pro day, not the combine. Missed a bunch of throws. You heard from teams that already didn't like him. We like him even less now. And I think that's what it comes down to. If you evaluate Will Howard and you love his tape and you like talking to him personally and you see him throw poorly at the combine, you're going to say, well, it was the combine. There was no competitive spirit. There was no defense. He plays his best when it matters. And if you don't like him anyway, you're going to come out and say, well, if he couldn't do it against air, why is he going to be able to do it on Sundays? It really is just something that's going to reaffirm what you already believe about a prospect.
And as always, how about those receivers? Are we sure those were the routes they should have been running? Are we sure they timed those jumps as they should have? Those were airmailed, but like not so egregiously where a good receiver might not have helped his quarterback out. I would be pretty mad if that was the help I got.
There's another skill quote unquote, that they do at the combine, the Underwear Olympics, if you will. The miles per hour throw for quarterbacks now. They started doing this recently. Dart hit 58 miles per hour, which sounds great. There was a wobble there, right? I mean, you can cut your receiver with the amount of wobble on that. I'm not sure that is exactly optimal for skills. By the way, if you draft him, Pablo, on your fantasy team, Jackson Dart, what is your team name?
Well, my team name is Pablo's Part Filipinos, so I need to do some investigation, some finding out about Jackson before he made the cut, I think.
Pablo finds out. We'll take a break. Bye till next.
I'm hopeful.
Baseball culture.
Welcome back to Around the Horn, coming to you from the Heineken River Deck at Pier 17.
NHL news of the day, and it's big. Matthew Tkachuk, IR, will miss the remainder of the regular season. He injured his groin at the Four Nations. Tkachuk and Charlie McAvoy, two huge injuries in that tournament. Bruins were not happy about the McAvoy injury, Team USA, and it's seriously affecting NHL teams' postseason push. The champs now Tkachuk-less, but could Tkachuk, if he would Tkachuk, by the time of Stanley Cup, could Tkachuk would. They're sitting comfortably as third in conference points right now. Clinton, what do you buy, what do you sell?
I'm buying all of this. I'm buying that it's a problem for the NHL and it's going to affect later tournaments. Although, mind you, you cannot fight in the Olympics. Not that that's where these injuries came from. But I'm also buying that this was absolutely well worth it. Are we serious? We wouldn't be talking about these injuries on this very program were the Four Nations face-off not to have been a thing that already happened, gaining our excitement to this level. Now, that being said, I don't love the idea that that's how we're looking at what this is going to ultimately do for the game down the line. I think international play is as important to the larger growth of hockey as the NHL is. And reminder, they're hockey players. They're tough. They can deal with it. That's the whole
Bill
thing.
Barnwell, around the horn to you.
Buying that maybe some salary cap shenanigans here. Remember, with the NHL's long-term injured reserve rules, if you are on LTIR into the postseason, you can use that money saved to add a player. And the Panthers did add a player this weekend in Seth Jones, maybe making some moves, trying to build the best possible playoff roster. Maybe Kachuk could have came back early. But at the end of the day, this is not about what the teams care about. It's about what the players feel. The players were the ones who put themselves into this tournament and didn't play it like an exhibition or a week off. They played it like their careers depended on it. And it's going to be a question of whether they want to keep doing that if there's a serious risk of injury. I think they will, but teams really don't enter into the equation here.
Pablo Torre?
Yeah, I buy that hockey culture is what keeps it from grappling with the problem that the NBA is grappling with. Tony, I feel like every once in a while a hockey player may wake up in the middle of the night and be like, should I load manage? And then they realize, no, I'm a hockey player, and they go back to bed. This is what happens. This is why the NBA is in the place that they're in. And so hockey culture will prevent this from being a problem because these guys treat these games with the seriousness that the NBA wishes they would.
Courtney Cronin around the horn to you.
I believe it was our own Emily Kaplan who said during the USA-Canada final that she had talked to players who were injured that were going to be going back to their teams for the second half of the season, and they were okay with that because they were so bought in and this exhibition game was so worth it to them to try to fight for a medal. And look, this is not going to happen next year or the year after. Like, it comes back at the earliest in 3 years, so it's not like every single February, we're going to be talking about guys getting hurt and missing the second half.
Oh, you can get hurt in the Olympics.
I think
you can get hurt in the World Cup as well.
You can get hurt at any time in hockey. It's a violent sport.
Was it?
And, you know, it's good for the moment of hockey right now. 9.8 million people watched the final game between USA and Canada. You had nearly 95,000 people at the Stadium Series over the weekend. Hockey's on a heater. It's a good thing.
I hear you. There was a time, though, NHL teams worried about their players getting hurt at the Olympics as well. This is a worry you can understand teams might have. The Panthers happen to be the defending champs, and they're in a fine place for the postseason push right now, and maybe they'll get him back. Matthew Tkachuk, the star of Team USA at the Four Nations. We'll move on. Buy or sell two, the biggest result from college this weekend. Tails was the biggest result because the SEC decided their regular season championship and conference tournament top seed by coin toss, which they did on television because we all needed to see this. Texas was heads, South Carolina was tails. It was tails. Goes to the Gamecocks. They were both 15-1. They split the season head-to-head. Courtney, third tiebreaker is coin toss in the year of our Lord 2025. Buy or sell that?
Selling it. It shouldn't surprise you because we have 32 NFL teams that want to hand time their own 40s when we could laser time this. This should have come down to the series point differential, which South Carolina owned. That should have determined the number one seed, not a close-up on Greg Sankey's.
Glenn Yates?
If you want to do something goofy just for television, hear me out here. Starting five, best of five, knockout, basketball, camp, shenanigans are what I'm here for if we must be ridiculous, SEC.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give points. I'll give you points for knockout because knockout is the most underrated of the games.
Great game.
Yes, absolutely.
That's it.
But we have other tiebreakers we can go to before we do shenanigans, right? Bill Barnwell, around the horn to you.
Oh, no, I am totally in on the shenanigans part of the equation here. This is the Zoom era. Rock, paper, scissors. Maybe you bring in two coaches and D2 Mighty ducks it up and have two coaches at the building playing one-on-one versus each other. If this were a appointment television event tonight where I knew there was going to be something weird happening to decide this game, I'd be too.
Bill. The NFL wild card has how many? 5, 6, 7 different scenarios. You're not advising for rock, paper, scissors. Pablo, please, last word after the horn. You're already advancing.
How do you get all the way around the horn to me where I can just say point differential, question mark?
Yeah.
And that still be a new
Yeah, sort of how this show works.
South Carolina, they won by 17 over Texas. Texas, in their win, won by 4. That decides it right there. It's very simple. Clinton Yates, point differential. Bill Barnwell, shenanigans. Cronin, Torre, showdown next.
Around the Horn is brought to you by UFC 313. Saturday. Buy now at ESPNplus.com/PPV.
Top 10 showdown in college. Tennessee over Alabama Saturday. It was decided on this buzzer beater. Back it up a few minutes down the stretch, though. There was a Bama 5-second violation throughout the back end of this, defensive lapses from the Crimson Tide as well. Courtney, did Tennessee win it or Alabama volunteer it?
So let me get this straight. NATO's called a timeout to draw up a play underneath the basket. They get a 5-second violation, and then they allowed Jemai Meshack to shoot 35-foot uncontested. Yeah, this is a meltdown for Bama.
Pablo?
Well, hold on. Tennessee, keep in mind the spot on the court, that three at the end, which won the game, what that actually was, it was the summit. He won it by pulling up from the summit.
I love that.
Give the credit to the guy
that.
who did that.
A point for your effort there. But the Nate Oates calling a timeout and then the 5-second violation is a killer.
Admittedly, pretty bad.
Cronin gets the lead going into showdown 2, and here we are now with Steph Curry.
Curry sneaking down court, and Curry with the dunk.
Yes, he said at the end of an era, his last dunk ever. Pablo Torre, how will you remember Steph Curry the dunker?
I'll remember it as the cherry on top of the most depressing ice cream sundae that this Sixers season has been. It's not Joel Embiid being out for the year. It's not the mismanagement of every possible move to make. It's somehow Steph Curry dunking uncontested.
Sorry.
That feels just like the metaphor for all of this. So
What a way to beat the allegations that you're washed. I mean, he did say earlier that day, Jerry Stackhouse told him to try it. He said his knees felt great. Clearly, he's healthy and ready to take this team on a run.
I went and I looked, and there are videos, 5 minutes worth of YouTube videos of Steph dunking. Do you know how many he's had in his career? Come on, guys, do some research. 27. 27 in his career. That surprised me. Take the FaceTime for me.
What a moment for hockey over the weekend. Red Wings, Blue Jackets in the Stadium Series. 94,751 people pouring into Ohio Stadium out in the cold. Love seeing it done in college venues. We saw it done at Michigan before, too. And it was really cool to watch the moment for Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. NHL continuing to honor those two gone far too soon.
Well said, Courtney. And we're twinsies today. We'll see you tomorrow around the horn.